in the audience today with us, we have Echo, Demi, Lori, Herb, and Caleb. Probably one of the most common problems we have in the world today is drug addiction. The National Institute on Drug Abuse, also known as the NIDA, recently wrote, in 2011, an estimated 22.5 million Americans aged 12 or older had used an illicit drug or abused a psychotherapeutic medication in the past month. You may not intentionally be using illicit drugs, but you may have developed a drug problem without even realizing it. I would like to talk to you about the problem of drug addiction in the world today based off of some observations I have seen around me and some research I have done on this topic. Drug addiction is probably one of the most, if not the most common problem in the world today. While drug addiction is probably one of the most common in the world today, due to the fact that it is a neurological condition, not all of the drugs are illicit. There are many addictive drugs that people do not even consider to be drugs. Whether they are illicit or not, they all prevent people from honoring God's values of human life and self-control. Drug addiction is actually a neurological medical condition that is very difficult to cure. What makes drug addiction a neurological problem, you may wonder? Sally Sadel writes in an article titled Addiction and Freedom. The answer neuroscientists give is that it is tied to changes in brain structure and function. They trigger intracellular biochemical events that eventually modify brain circuits that mediate the experience and memory of pleasure. There are many different types of illicit drugs that people use today. As you can see in this chart from the NIDA, the most common of these illicit drugs are marijuana, pain relievers, and inhalants. Even if someone were only to use drugs just once, they are still more likely to become addicted due to the fact that they would already have experienced the pleasure that is produced with these drugs. However, this does not only refer to illicit drugs. There are more than just illicit drugs that people can become addicted to. For example, over-the-counter daily drugs such as Tylenol, ibuprofen, alcohol, nicotine, and even caffeine are all drugs that are considered addictive. Even though people do not consider these drugs addictive, they can be just as, if not more dangerous than illicit drugs. When referring to legal drugs, Stephen Thomas writes, the American public should face the fact that legal drugs used by respectable people are the bedrock and backbone of this country's drug problem. It is because of the fact that people do not consider these legal drugs to be harmful that they are even more likely to become addicted to them. By using these drugs, people are not honoring God's values of self-control and human life. From what I have seen and heard, most of the time, when someone begins to use illicit drugs, they are pressured to do so, therefore showing that they do not have enough self-control, which is one of God's values that we are told about in Proverbs 25-28. Like a city whose walls are broken through is a person who lacks self-control. These drugs, whether legal or not, also have an effect on our bodies and our lives. The Bible tells us in 1 Corinthians 6:19, do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. We need to help people realize that their bodies are temples of God, and when they use drugs, they are hurting these temples. We can help people realize this by appealing to their moral conscience. Donald Alvin says, one must know that although humanity's moral consciousness bears its Creator's imprint, it is not a perfect expression of God's moral will. Even though everyone's conscience is not perfect, I believe that we will be able to, in some way, convince them that doing drugs is wrong due to the fact that everyone's conscience is from God's imprint, as Alvin said. While there are many different drugs that people may become addicted to, we can help to convince them that they're not honoring and respecting God's values when they harm their bodies and their lives. No matter who the person is, they will most likely have some sort of moral conscience that can be used to help them get off of drugs. While one of the most common problems in the world today is drug addiction, these rates have slowly been declining over the years. As you can see, drug use, as of 2011, has declined by nearly 30% and hopefully will continue to decline as the years go by. Thank you.